It's going to be a football game tonight now. No doubt. It's going to be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
9. Rushing 4, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, and it's still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
Alabama back on top of the college football world.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to the max.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Hello and welcome to the first of 2 editions of Football to the Max. We're going to do back-to-back here. Guys, I mean, it's been a weekend. Anything interesting going on here?
I don't know. Has anybody else looked up from their phone since the last podcast?
It seems like everybody is playing Pokemon Go at this point.
I'm actually reporting live from the hospital. I got hit by a car. Yeah, no, I'm teasing.
Oh, God.
Joking. I'm just saying people are being crazy with this game, man. Just saying. Just not paying attention, driving off cliffs, things like that.
Total BS about, it's only going to be in safe areas. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, I downloaded it. I played it for a while. The girlfriend's addicted, but I've already went ahead and deleted it. Not because the game is bad or whatever. It's just it's so buggy right now that I'm like, I'll just wait. I'll wait a week or 2 until they figure some stuff out. And Nintendo, I mean, I know this is a sports podcast, but Nintendo, I mean, the easiest way to fix a lot of these car accidents and stuff, you base it off GPS. If the little marker on the GPS is going more than 10 miles an hour, turn the game off. Like, just, that turns off the game. If the GPS dude starts moving too fast, obviously you're in a car. Just turn it off. It's fine.
Well, see, but then you have the people that use their car to get to the destination that wherever the thing is, and it's not somebody actually trying to play it while they're driving.
Well, yeah. Well, then the game is off or froze or in a pause menu until you reach your destination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my wife's GPS will not allow you to type anything in if the car is moving. So that's the same way I think it is.
GPS because mine.
Yeah.
I have to type while I'm moving sometimes because it might tell me the wrong place, and so I have to redo it.
Yeah, well, that's the vein.
So I'll bring this back to football, though. I mean, because we were just talking about it beforehand, where people don't realize you can get things from quite a distance away. You don't have to be right there. I mean, football has their streakers. How long until our first football game gets interrupted by a nerd running out on the field trying to get a Squirtle?
Oh, God. I'm waiting for that, too. Like, I saw a picture of us. There was a licky tongue, apparently, at Citi Field during the Mets game or something, and people were thinking about whether it was worth it to, start going down steps and stuff. I was like, really? It's not that serious, guys. It's not like you even get to, battle with these things that well or whatever. I've been playing Pokemon Yellow, and I still much more enjoy the games than I do Pokemon Go,
Mm-hmm.
But,
wow. Yeah, one thing that I think would help, and this is football related too, is, with these kind of games, Pokemon Go is a big deal right now. People care about it. I think they need to have incentives. And one thing that they could do, and Nintendo, you're not spending a lot of money doing it, give out Johnny Manziel jerseys. They're only $1.99 apparently in Cleveland. You can literally go and buy a Johnny Manziel jersey for $1.99. I mean, you could use it for a rag to wipe your car down.
Yeah. Of course, always need those rags to help you wipe the cars down. But
I'm just saying. I mean, come on.
Yeah, better than using it to wipe your butt with or something.
Yeah, well, that's what Randy. You may be more on that option, huh?
Randy's probably like, I'd rather just not even bother with his jersey at all, or that he ever existed in the league. But
I would buy his prison uniform because that's the only uniform he'll be wearing the rest of his life.
Oh, that's there you go.
I don't. Damn. Woo. Hot fire with that one.
Oh.
Just. All right. Look. I'm gonna be real about this. We want these kind of conference and the division previews to kind of stand by themselves. So from now on, if there's a lot of news, and especially I'm sure that will start happening once we get to like the training camps being open and all that stuff, and once the college football starts really getting into close to the season, we will just do a news thing by itself. And if you're listening to us on Last Word, on the Last Word Radio, through lastwordonsports.com, which are our great partners, I apologize, but that will not appear on the site because it's kind of pointless for us to have it's hard enough just to promote the one article for whatever podcast we have coming out that day. To promote two different ones that's insane with all the stuff I got going on and the rest of us got going on. So for you guys to listen outside of everything else, it'll be in your feed just like everything else. So you can listen to us talk for about 30 minutes about NFL or college news or whatever. But today we are previewing the Big Ten. This will be our first of two previews. Right after this, or if you're listening on demand, they'll both be right there. We'll do the AAC to get us back on track. And then the next Monday coming up, we're doing the ACC. So we'll be hitting them hard and heavy. And, of course, if you're listening and wondering where the NFL talk is going, that's on the Friday morning podcast. We'll be doing the AFC South over there. So we're going to start it right here with Rob Gritzer from Last Word on Sports. He writes about Ohio State. And, of course, he gives you sort of a general look at the Big Ten. And then we'll have our good friend Brandon Clapp after him. We'll talk about what Rob says here, and then we'll have Brandon come on, and he's going to give you a more in-depth preview of the Big Ten. So here's Rob Gritzer. Goes about 17 and a half minutes talking Ohio State and talking the Big Ten. All right, well, I would like to welcome Rob Gritzer from lastwordonsports.com. Here he writes about Ohio State, the Big Ten, and even some hockey writing for the New York Rangers. How you doing today, Rob?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Doing all right. So is the being an Ohio State fan, is that a lifelong thing, or is that something you picked up later in life? How'd that go?
That's what my cousin, he went to Ohio State right when I was starting to get into football because I was born right outside of Pittsburgh, and I wasn't really a big Pittsburgh fan, wasn't really a big Penn State fan. So when he went to Ohio State, I started liking them, and ever since then I've just loved the team. So,
I mean, last year they didn't quite reach the pinnacle they did the year before, but they still got to the Fiesta Bowl and everything, and had tying that record for players going to the NFL. Lots of retooling that they got to do now coming into this season. How do you think they're gonna stack up in that Big Ten? Just looking at the team from last year to this year.
I think the team's still going to do pretty well. I mean, the losses are like Ezekiel Elliott, Joey Bosa, Taylor Decker, Michael Thomas. That's going to really hurt the team. But the replacements they've been able to get, Briante Dunn he's coming off an injury, wasn't able to play in the spring game, so he's a little questionable. But Mike Weber is a true freshman. He's looking to take the spot, maybe. Nick Bosa has apparently been playing pretty well in camp so far. DeMarco Jones, not really sure how he's going to be able to take over how Taylor Decker was. And the receiving core could go either way this year, but Noah Brown, Curtis Samuel, and Corey Smith are all going to be fighting for the number one receiver. And I think that they should be able to have a pretty good core. help JT Barrett out and hopefully get him back to where he was in 2014.
I'm hearing some talk about JT Barrett as far as Heisman and just being people really believing he can get back to that level. Do you see that happening for him?
I think that he'll be able to get back to an elite level, but with Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson both there, and then you have Leonard Fournette, winning the Heisman I don't think should be a priority, but just getting back to the level he was at, because Baker Mayfield's probably going to go and throw 35, 40 touchdowns in the Big 12, and Deshaun Watson will probably be able to throw about 30, 35 in the ACC and probably add another 10 rushing touchdowns. I could see JT Barrett throwing for about 25 to 30 passing touchdowns, have the 10 rushing as well, but I don't think that he'll be able to beat out like Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield for a Heisman. So, but I think this year could still be a pretty good year for him and definitely help get his draft stock up.
So where do you think Ohio State's strength is now with this team the way it is?
I think the strength is definitely going to be running the offense through JT Barrett. The rushing game, we're not going to be able to have, no matter how well Breontae Dunn or Mike Weber do, they're not going to be able to get back up to where Ezekiel Elliott was. So Ohio State's offense will be a little bit more limited. But with Ed Warner starting to call the plays and Tim Beck just sort of stepping back and kind of being the co-offensive coordinator, I think that it will still help the team, and they'll still be able to have a good year. I could see 10, 11 wins this year. Even I think the Oklahoma game, I don't think Ohio State will be able to keep up with them. I could see Ohio State beating Michigan State, Penn State. The Michigan game is kind of a toss-up for me, and I think personally Ohio State will be able to pull through because they've had such a great record against Michigan as of late. And the game is in Columbus this year, so I think Ohio State could definitely have a good shot winning the Big Ten East.
Yeah, I mean, last year Michigan made some big strides with Jim Harbaugh there, and it seems like a lot of people are just talking about them going all the way at least to the college football playoff spot this year. Do you see that for them, or do you think it's a lot of hype?
I think that the winner of the Big Ten East is going to be going to the college football playoffs because they're going to be able to go and probably win the Big Ten overall. The West hasn't really made any big strides with Wisconsin, Northwestern. Iowa, I feel like, is going to drop off pretty heavily this year. Or not heavily, but at least not up to winning the Big Ten West. So the East winner I could easily see going to the college football playoffs. And the two teams I think are the only two fighting for it really are Ohio State and Michigan. But even Michigan State, they're with all the losses they took with Connor Cook and 3 starting O-linemen, Conklin, Allen, Clark, and they lost 4 of their front 7 on defense. I just can't see them making a good run at it this year.
A lot's been made about what Jim Harbaugh does with these satellite camps and everything like that. Are you one of those that's in favor of it, or are you against it?
I honestly haven't really been following up on the satellite cam thing. To me, I think it's fine, but I haven't really been following up on a lot of the details on it.
Fair enough. I mean, going to some of the other, you mentioned that the West side of the Big Ten hasn't improved a lot compared to some of the big teams in the East. Who do you see really making that step up? Is that surprise team you think going to come out of the West, or is that also going to come out of the East?
I think that if there is going to be a team in the West that's really going to step up and be a solid team, it's going to be Wisconsin. They have an early game against LSU, which I don't expect them to win at all. But if Wisconsin can keep that game close, I feel like it'll help them later on in the year when they're trying to fight for spots. And, we were close to LSU. So I could see them if they can keep that game close, it should help. Joel Stave won't be there anymore, which I think is a blessing for them. He threw 34 interceptions in the last 3 years, had one of those seasons where he had more touchdowns than picks. And 4 of their 5 receiving targets are returning. Wheelwright, Fumagale, Ogunbuwale, I can never pronounce that, and Peavy are all coming back. And some of their key games this year, like the LSU game, they're going to have some tough games on the road. Michigan State, Michigan, even Iowa and Northwestern, I think, will be tough road games. And they have Ohio State at home, which if Ohio State can really prove that they're a good team and Wisconsin can stay close with them too, I think it'll help them later on in the year. And they'll still be able to be like a top 15 team even with 2-3 losses.
So do you think Iowa's going to be the team that drops off the most in the Big Ten from last year?
I think that Iowa and Michigan State are both going to have pretty decent drop-offs. Iowa, they're losing their star running back, Henzari, and they are also losing their 2 starting O-linemen and 3 of their front 7. Drew Ott, he was denied the 6-year eligibility. So I'm not sure how I was really going to be able to replace that. I just can't see them really having a big year with Iowa. I mean, they have to go play Northwestern, Wisconsin, Penn State, and Michigan, and honestly, I can't see them winning any of those games.
Should we expect anything out of Illinois with Lovie Smith now being the coach there?
Illinois, they have a pretty tough schedule up ahead of them, and even though they're in the West where it's not as talented, I don't see Illinois really making any big strides. I think that they'll still be able to finish ahead of Purdue, and they might be able to fight with Minnesota, but I don't see them really having a big year at all.
I've been reading some things that apparently people think Minnesota is going to have a much better year than last year. Do you see that happening, like they're going to improve a lot?
I could see Minnesota still sticking around like the 500 mark, maybe pushing up to like a 7-5 record. But again, they're going to have some pretty tough games. They're going to have to go play Oregon State, which I think both teams are pretty equal. They're still going to have to go play Penn State, Iowa. They have Nebraska, Northwestern, Wisconsin, which are all games that I think could go either way for them, but I don't see Minnesota really making big strides this year.
So when we're looking at, let's say we're getting towards the end of the year, what do you think are some what are some players that people need? Maybe you don't pay attention so much to the Big Ten. You're a fan of other schools. What are some players that people need to watch out for that are going to be maybe big names draft-wise or anything like that?
Draft-wise?
Well, I mean, I guess just like players that you're going to know their names by the time this season is.
I think that O'Korn in Michigan, he's going to have a very good year. JT Barrett, I think he's also going to have a pretty good year. Both of them are going to be big players to watch down the road. I think they could both really solidify themselves as like first-round picks. Maybe not top 10 picks, but I could see them being like in the 15 to 20 range. Other than that, no real names stick out that much. I think one player, he's not going to be going to the draft, but one player to really watch is Nick Bosa. In high school, they were even saying Nick Bosa has more talent than Joey Bosa did. So he could really bring himself right back into another top 5 pick for that family. And that would just, I'm not sure if there's a record where 2 players from the same family were able to go that high in the draft, but I think Nick Bosa could easily, if he can have a few good years, he could definitely repeat his brother's steps.
So I'm going to have you do something that isn't always everybody's favorite thing. But when you look at the standings for the Big Ten East, how do you see those panning out?
Like how the teams are going to rank?
Yeah.
Or just I'm still going to stick with the fact that I think Ohio State will be able to go down and in Columbus beat Michigan. So I think Ohio State will win the Big Ten East. I think that loss to Ohio State will be Michigan's only loss this year. They still have an insanely good team. So I feel like they're going to be about second in the Big Ten East. Penn State, I think they'll be able to make some strides after last year's 7-6 year. Had a good bowl, or at least a good bowl game effort against Georgia, who had one of the best pass defenses in the league, and Trace McSorley still played well for them. So I think that they'll be able to go about 9-3. I don't see them beating Michigan, Ohio State. Pittsburgh is one game that I would not be surprised seeing Penn State lose. They're going to have to go into Heinz Field, and I'm not sure how Penn State's going to be able to do in that game. Michigan State, I could see them dropping off. They're going to have some games against Michigan, Ohio State. Even Wisconsin, I'm not sure if Michigan State will be able to go and beat them. So I could see them going about 9-3, maybe 8-4 if they can lose to Penn State as well. For the rest of the East, I don't see any big strides. I think Maryland's going to have a repeat year, not really make much of an effort to improve. Rutgers, I could see them being about the same, and Indiana, I think they're going to stick around 6-6.
What about the West?
The West, I could see being pretty similar to last year, too. The only major change I could see is Iowa dropping off and Wisconsin taking their spot. I think Wisconsin's going to be the team to watch in the West, and I don't think that the West will be able to really compete with the East, but I think that Wisconsin will win it. Northwestern will probably be fighting for it, and if a team other than Wisconsin makes it to the Big Ten championship, I feel like it's going to have to be Northwestern. Iowa just not looking like it's going to be their year with all the losses they've taken. And then for the rest, like Nebraska and Minnesota, I could see them sticking around the 7-5, 6-6 mark. And Illinois and Purdue, I could see them just kind of sticking where they were. Illinois maybe having a little bit of a drop-off even, maybe going down to 3-9 because their schedule isn't as good. They're going to have to go and play UNC, Nebraska, Rutgers, Michigan. Minnesota could go either way because Minnesota generally plays worse against worse teams. And Michigan State, Wisconsin, Iowa, even Northwestern. I don't think Illinois is going to have a very good year.
So when you're looking at, you said some of these teams are maybe going to do worse and everything. Is there a coach that you think needs to be worried about their job if they don't do better than last season?
I feel like no one's really going to be in danger of losing it. Maybe Maryland or Purdue are going to have to make some coaching changes because they haven't really been the best lately, and they're not really making a lot of big improvements. They're not able to get any major recruits coming in. I know that Maryland was having some trouble with Ohio State actually stealing some of their recruits this year, like having them decommit and then go to Ohio State. So they might want to try and get their scouting a little bit up, get some better coaches in that area. But I don't think anyone's really in danger of, if they don't do well this year, they're going to guaranteed lose their job.
So you've already said Ohio State, Wisconsin in the championship game. You think Ohio State wins then?
I think that Ohio State will be able to win. Even if Michigan can go and beat Ohio State, I could see Michigan beating Wisconsin. And the winner, whether it's Ohio State or Michigan, I feel like is going to go to college football playoffs. How well they'll do, I'm not exactly sure. But the loser will probably go to the Rose Bowl, and I think that the Pac-12 even will be a pretty good conference to watch. And if Stanford doesn't get into the college football playoffs, I think that Stanford could just go and run over another Big Ten team in the Rose Bowl.
All right, Rob, you've answered all of our questions here. I want to thank you for helping us out, man.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to be on.
Well, I mean, we'll be covering college football a lot more this. All right, I meant to stop it before then, but I was the mute button did not want to undo it though. So guys, I mean, it's funny I'm the one that's listened to both the interviews, and in some of these, how different Brandon and Rob are gonna be by the time we get to this. But any thoughts on what Rob said here? Do you think it's before we get to like our final sayings that we'll do after we listen to what Brandon had to say? Is it Ohio State? You think is the front runner here again?
Yeah, I think Ohio State most likely is right up there with only a few true contenders. I'm kind of with him where I want to make sure I get it. The East, right? Ohio State's East. I want to
Yes.
I didn't write that part down, but yeah, the East is much better than the West. I didn't want to flip that and sound dumber than I am, but I think the one thing that I really want to disagree with Rob is just I don't see Iowa dropping off as much as he was thinking. I really think, I mean, they have a lot of people returning on that defense, which was one of the top units in the entire country. And the fact that they don't even have to play Ohio State this year, and Michigan, who I think is the other really top runner in the Big Ten, they get to host them in that game, which is going to help them out. So I think Iowa still has a pretty good chance here.
Ohio State is the center team here when it comes to probably the most likely to succeed, if you want to say it that way. A lot of these other teams you could, kind of push back and forth and say maybe, I think, all these kind of things. But yeah, I kind of feel the same way, with both Randy and him. I just kind of think that's the case. And I think, Michigan's a team I'm circling on my calendar every time they come up, just because I'm really curious to see how they're going to perform this year. I'm kind of curious what Brandon has to say about them too.
Yeah, Ohio State seems like, even though they had to deal with losing what they lost, which is that big record of guys, but Urban Meyer is no slouch at recruiting. He even said it. They got some other teams in the Big Ten itself to decommit and go to Ohio State. He's going to stack that covered right back up to the way it was, and maybe not this year, but especially next year they'll be back to that form. And and Michigan, this is their put up or shut up time. Like Jim Harbaugh's been talking a lot of smack. He's been talking it to people in other conferences even. He's really got to prove that Michigan is not going to go and lose to a Utah team again. They're not going to play badly against other teams. They're going to step up and be the big teams you expect them to be this time. So, again, I want to thank Rob for helping us here. Hopefully we'll get to talk to him again during the season. But here we go. Hopefully the first of many times we get Brandon to help us out here. Here's his our college football correspondent, Mr. Brandon Clapp, talking the Big Ten. Alrighty. Well, I think we've tried to have him on here I don't know how many times, and every time something happens, but thankfully, seems like this year it's going to work. And for our Big Ten preview, he's a friend of the show. We've had him on in the different incarnations this has taken. Mr. Brandon Clapp, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Glad to be on again. Looking forward to the season and ready to break down this conference.
So, as you probably already heard me talk about before, just to introduce everything, and you've heard Rob talk about as well, Brandon's going to be here giving you a more in-depth look here at the Big Ten, and we should probably just start in the West. The team that kind of made the most noise and kind of unexpected noise was Iowa. They maybe helped by their schedule a little bit, but they almost made it to the college football playoff. How do you think they look for this year?
I I like Iowa. I like what they bring back on defense, especially. They also bring back, in my opinion, the best quarterback in this part of the conference. And the schedule is set up nicely for them to once again make a run for the Big Ten title.
So, I mean, looking at why do you think specifically that they're going to be the front runners for that West Division?
While like I said, I like what they bring back on both sides of the ball. Losing their top rusher from a season ago won't be as hard to replace. With the LaShawn Daniels and Wadley coming back this year, and they shared the rock a lot last year anyway, and with what they got on defense combined with their schedule and having a quarterback who proved last year that he can make the plays when needed to, I think he'll be trusted a lot more this year. So I think his passing stats will increase this year a bit. I just don't see how Iowa doesn't at least win 9 or 10 games this year. I think they'll win 11 personally. 10 probably a little more realistic because they do got to play Michigan, and they got a tough game at Penn State. But I think they'll beat Penn State, so I like them to go 11-1 and 8-1 in the conference.
Well, they're the team that's usually the one that competes with them most of the time in this division is Wisconsin, and you were kind of telling me that you're not too high on them this season.
Mostly due to schedule. I mean, they got to play LSU, Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, at Iowa, and they got to go on the road versus a Northwestern team that I think will still be a good squad this year. I think they got the talent to play with any team in the Big Ten, but that schedule is it's brutal.
Good Lord. I mean, just the difference between what Iowa gets and what Wisconsin gets that's insane.
I don't know how the schedule makers get away with this every year, and they do it across the country. There's always one team that just seems to never have to face the better teams from the other side of the conference.
Another team that they surprised a lot of people last year. Northwestern. Do you see them kind of coming back down to earth a little bit, or do they go even higher?
I don't think they'll match last year's double-digit season. I think that they have the talent to compete for this side of the conference. But once again, they got that schedule problem. They draw Michigan State and Ohio State. They got to go on the road to Iowa. They got to go on the road to Minnesota as well, a team they should be able to beat, but it'll be a late season game, so probably be some weather issues down there as well. But the schedule just separates them from being able to compete for the division, in my opinion.
And when you look at, I think another team that, man, they could have been a lot closer if they hadn't been so they lost so many games really close in Nebraska. And yeah, it seems like depending on who you listen to, who you read, you're expecting for them to bounce back from that and do kind of what you expected them to do last year, or you expect them to kind of do the same thing where they don't meet expectations. Where do you see Nebraska at?
I see them improving on last year's win total. They bring back a very good offense with 7 returning starters. They bring back their leading ground gainer. I expect Armstrong to continue to improve. They bring back a very deep unit for him to throw the ball to as well. The defense, brings back 6 starters, including their top 2 tacklers. They're going to have one of the better secondaries in the country as well, I believe. But once again, for them, the problem is the schedule. The non-conference, they got Oregon on the schedule. They got to go to Northwestern. They got to play Ohio State, and they got to go to Iowa. Now, I think of all the teams in this side of the conference, they have the best chance to compete with Iowa, for that division crown.
Just from so you think that they'll be the one that will be closest to them? Are you talking about a couple wins close, or
I have them going 9-3, I believe. Yeah, 9-3. I think that game, the last game of the season for them, November 25th at Iowa. If Iowa stumbles, at Penn State and they lose to Michigan, which most people, I believe, will favor Michigan as of right now in that game, and Nebraska can, find a way to only lose, 1 or 2 games themselves in the Big Ten, that game right there will be the deciding game to see who goes to the Big Ten championship.
Illinois made a big hire in bringing in Lovie Smith, obviously from the NFL, and that surprising firing he received. Do you expect anything from Illinois at all in Lovie Smith's first season?
I think it was a great hire. I don't think you could go wrong with that guy. I think he's perfect for the college level. But at the same time, as good as he is, his coaching can only get them so far. There is a talent gap there, and that'd be a lot to ask for him to overcome that in his first year. I think they won 5 games last year, and I could maybe see if they get a couple upsets in there, 6 or 7 win season, but I got them down equaling last year's total myself.
All right, so when you're looking at the whole division, what do you have the standings at?
I have Iowa coming in first, Nebraska coming in second, Northwestern third, Wisconsin fourth, Minnesota fifth, Illinois sixth. Oh, wait, I think I messed up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Purdue last. I'm sorry.
So Purdue bringing up that rear again. That seems normal.
Their coach, dude, he's so much on the hot seat. His pants are smoldering, dude. I don't see how he might not survive mid-season.
Wow, that bad, huh?
Yeah.
At one point Purdue was something. I guess when Drew Brees was still quarterback in there, but since then it's like they took a nosedive.
There's some good news there. They bring back 16 starters, I think, in which is tied for the most in the conference. Their schedule isn't that bad, but still there's a gap there, man, even between them and the mediocre teams in the Big Ten, because Illinois destroyed them last year. So
well, let's move over to the East, which is the more heavy division. It's got the 2-headed monster right now. People are deciding whether it's Ohio State and Michigan. Jim Harbaugh makes some big noise in the offseason, just riling up everybody's feathers over there in the SEC, as he usually tries to do. And people are sort of expecting them to make the big jump this year and really be contending for that top spot, if not taking it. Do you think Michigan does that?
This was definitely the harder of the two to pick, because you got 3 teams that any one of them could easily win it. Michigan and Michigan fans, are coming into the season with huge expectations, and anything short of a playoff berth or a conference win in a playoff berth, and those expectations aren't going to be met. I don't think that they are quite ready to overtake Ohio State personally. The question at quarterback for me is pretty huge. They do return 14 starters and 8 on the offensive side of the ball, and I think they're going to be better than they were last year, and they averaged 31 points a game last year. I think they could even improve on that this year. 6 starters on defense. I think they'll make some improvements in a couple areas on their defense, but I like the fact that they got to go to Ohio State, and that's why I favor OSU.
Yeah, you think that big game on November 26th is going to decide things, right?
Yes, sir. I think that is probably going to be not only a conference or a division decider, but a playoff elimination game.
Well, if Harbaugh wants to make that stamp, he's going to have to bring him in there and win that game. If he's been talking a lot, he's going to be able to back it up. Ohio State lost a lot to the NFL, breaking that record that the ACC had set for so long, or at least tying it. And now, Urban Meyer has to work that magic, but that he recruits so well, you have to expect they're going to be doing okay, but are they going to go right back up to the top again?
I don't think that they'll equal last year's 12 wins. I think they'll equal 10 wins this year. JT Barrett, when he played a full season, led the NCAA in points accounted for. The kid's a baller. I think that with his talent and with the fact that Harbaugh has recruited so well at every area on his team, they'll just do what they do, and they don't really rebuild. They just replenish. And I like Ohio State a little bit more than Michigan because I trust JT Barrett.
Do you think JT Barrett's going to be going for Heisman consideration and all that?
It really depends on how well him and his receivers gel. They don't bring back one of their top 4, so it's going to be a little bit rough early on. And like last year, when they lost Devin Smith to the NFL, they were able to plug in a quarterback that was 6'6" and ended up getting drafted. So that helped out a lot for them. So a Heisman, I don't know about. I think that he'll definitely be first team Big Ten.
Well, the team that won the entire conference last year, Michigan State, they've also got to rebuild. No Connor Cook, both the offensive line taking a hit, defensive line taking a hit as well. Where do you see Michigan State in all this conversation?
Yeah, they're not quite as good as they've been in the last couple years. Huge question at quarterback, like you said, and just like the NFL, the college football is a quarterback driven league, and when you don't have a experienced quarterback, it's hard to trust you to continue to be as good as you've been. But they do bring back a nice team. They bring back L.J. Scott, Gerald Holmes. So their running game isn't going to falter much. They're pretty good down there with teaching those boys how to run block. Their schedule is pretty difficult, non-conference. They got Notre Dame. They got to play Northwestern at home, Michigan at home, Ohio State at home. So it's not as if Michigan State can't win this conference when you got your hardest games at home and you can take care of the easier ones on the road. I just like the other two teams, Michigan and Ohio State, a lot more than I like Michigan State.
I mean, the other team that, most of the time they've been hit by those scholarship restrictions because of all the controversy that happened and everything, the scandal going on. But now they seem to be back at full strength with that. This is James Franklin's third year over at Penn State. I mean, is this going to be that year that they finally do something?
This is, in my opinion, Franklin's best team. Like Michigan State and like Michigan, they have a question at quarterback. They do return their top ground gainer from last year and 3 of their top 4 pass catchers. So whoever's under center is going to have weapons. They always have had a pretty decent defense under Franklin. They only averaged giving up 21 points per game last year. They only bring back 5 starters this year. I think that number is going to go up a little bit. I don't think they'll be as stout on the defensive side of the ball, and I think it's going to cost them some games. But they do get Ohio State at home and Iowa at home and Michigan State at home. So if they can find a way to win those games, then Penn State's going to be a team that you're going to be hearing about.
Yeah, it certainly got the favorable draw with all those games at home. I mean, you'd have to imagine that. I mean, they've got to at least figure out that offensive line issues and whoever's going to play quarterback for them, because no Hackenberg, and that offensive line has been letting pretty much everybody through to get sacks. I mean,
and they lost Geno Lewis to Oklahoma, the wide receiver. So,
do you think the offensive side is going to get better this year? Or
I do. Hackenberg really was average to begin with. So, whoever steps in there, I mean, he can't play that much worse than what Hackenberg actually played.
True that. Last year, I mean, that's why he dropped, right? Because last year he didn't have as good a year as the year before.
Yeah, I mean, he passed for 2,500 yards, but he had some very untimely interceptions, just passes in games and moments you're like, wow.
So I mean,
because he was projected as the number 1 draft pick. That's and you're like, wow,
exactly. It was crazy to hear all these people. Oh, that next day after the playoff game. Oh, yeah, Hackenberg's gonna be the first guy. First draft, and then man, he drops all the way down to where he did, and you're like, wow, from the first pick to this.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have a mutual friend who's always wanting to know how Indiana's doing, and you were kind of telling me that you kind of have some faith in Indiana this year.
Yeah, I think they're going to improve on last year's win total. I got them winning 8 games this year. They made a change at defensive coordinator. They bring back a pretty deep squad with 13 total starters. Once again, they lose their running back, but they also lose their quarterback. But Kevin Wilson's system, they're going to be able to put a guy in there, and he may not be as good as Sudfeld was, but he's still going to put up numbers, and they're still going to score points. The switch at defensive coordinator for me is huge. The guy they brought in, he at his last job, he ran a 4.25. Not sure he's going to implement that at Indiana with the personnel they got currently. but he is a good defensive mind, and I think that they're going to drop that 37.6 points per game they gave up last year. If they could get that down to about 28 points per game and then figure out how to get those key stops in those key moments of games, Indiana could be a dark horse to pull the upset in this division.
Oh, there you go. Already heard it. If you're an Indiana fan, got a lot of faith here going on. So when you look at the division in full, where you got the standings?
I got Ohio State coming in first, Michigan State second, or Michigan second. I'm sorry, Michigan State third, Iowa fourth, Penn State fifth, Maryland sixth, and Rutgers bring in the rear.
Oh, you got Indiana in fourth? Wow.
Yeah.
So who do you have? So you got Ohio State and Iowa.
And I got Ohio State running away with the game and winning the Big Ten this year.
Do you think they get one of those playoff spots?
I do not. I see them going 10-2. I see them losing to Oklahoma at Norman, and I have them losing to Michigan State.
Well, Big Ten representatives not going to be happy to hear that. I mean, so
somebody's got to get left out. It doesn't mean that their conference isn't good. I think it's improved vastly over the last couple years. I think they're going to finish with once again with at least 5 teams in the top 25.
Where do you rank the Big Ten as far as the conferences? Do you have them at least number 2?
I have the Pac-12 at number 2. I actually have the Big Ten over the Big 12 right now, just because of what's happened to Baylor, and I think that the bottom, the mediocre teams in the Big Ten are just a step above a couple of the mediocre teams in the Big 12. So I have them at third.
What are maybe a player or two that we should be looking out for here in the Big Ten that you think people are going to be talking about?
Well, definitely J.T. Barrett, and I like C.J. Beathard. I think they're the 2 best quarterbacks in the conference, and I think all year long both of them are going to do their thing.
Well, I think that about wraps it up. Anything else you want to say about the Big Ten before we close it up here?
No, I think that we covered about everything, man.
All right, Brandon. Well, thank you for helping us out, and hopefully, if everything matches up with schedules and everything, we have you here next week for the ACC as well.
See, the beautiful thing about making predictions, when you're right, you can remind everybody that you were right.
Yeah.
But when you're wrong, you can just let everybody forget.
Oh, yeah, we try to do that, and then people call us out on it, and then we have to, we have to deal with it. So.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we'll be, I'm sure that there'll be somebody out there that goes, oh man, Brandon picked Indiana over there, and they just bottomed out. Watch out, So, well, hopefully all your predictions go right, So you can be the smartest guy here. And well, thank you again, Brandon, and you have a good night, sir.
All right, no problem, Sean. Thank you for having me on, brother.
All right. That was Brandon giving me the lowdown on everything Big Ten. I think Rainey's going to agree more with what he said here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would too. From everything I said. Randy can stick around.
Hey, you got the Randy Siller approval there.
Yeah. Lots of good points. I enjoyed listening to Brandon talk about some of those, different aspects of each team. And I'm really, really kind of considering the fact that, I love actually watching several of these teams. And, like I said before we got into Brandon's segment, I really am kind of curious where Michigan is going to really fall on this. Are they going to meet expectations? I know Michigan fans are super excited. I mean, I know a few of them personally, and they're ready to win now. They think that they're going to take that top spot already. And, who knows? I mean, we may get into next season, and they may do just that. Ohio may actually have a hangover from losing so many talents from their squad and just kind of fall into the trap of, hey, we're going to be successful, and oops, that didn't happen. I don't know. It's really, really curious about that. The other part of this conference, excuse me, it is interesting as well. I mean, Iowa is a big team to look at and really try to say, hey, they have a big shot here. Wisconsin still, to me, is a very intriguing team. I look at them as being a team that has a potential as well that maybe is a sleeper. Maybe people aren't going to give them enough credit, and they're going to sneak out and be the team going to a championship game here.
All right, so now it's time, guys. We've got to make our predictions, our full standings, and who's going to get out of this conference with the win. And, if we think they're going to be making that, if we agree with Mr. Gritzer that one of these teams is going to represent in the playoff, or if we're going to agree with Brandon that they're not. So, Randy, where do you have your standings in the West?
All right, in the West, I'll just start from the bottom. I think Purdue's going to finish in last. It's just how it goes. Minnesota 6th, Illinois 5th. I like the addition of Lovie Smith, I think, like they did, but I agree with them. It's going to take a few more years. I have Northwestern in 4th, just schedule-wise, mainly, as I think one of them said, at Iowa. They also have Michigan State and Ohio State on the road this year. That's brutal. Another brutal schedule goes to Nebraska. But I like how they have a lot of veteran leadership on offense, so they're going to be contenders for sure. A team that is going to get it done on the other side of the ball is Wisconsin, whose defense is one of the best in the nation, and I mean they don't have much offense to speak of, so they're going to have to win a lot of low-scoring games, but I think they can get it done. But to me, and I said it earlier, a team that I don't think is going to drop off as much as some people believe is Iowa. I have them winning the West pretty handily. Again, they host Michigan and avoid Ohio State, and they get a ton of returning starters on offense. So I think they are the head of the class in the West.
Okay.
Oh boy, looking at this, I have to agree with these guys. Purdue is definitely going to be, the bottom feeder. Sadly, I've always enjoyed watching Purdue, but when it comes to the West, they're just not going to be ready to go. Looking at this also, I think Illinois is my next. Then I have to say Minnesota, a little bit better. I'm going to actually be surprising and say maybe Northwestern does fall a little bit. I'm going to say they go here. Nebraska moves up that ladder, and then in Wisconsin, it's just going to be in second place. They're going to follow up to Iowa. I think Iowa is going to take care of business. I look at them being one of the better teams. So, yeah. And going to the East, I'm going to have to look at it. Maryland, of course, they're the bottom feeder of the East. Rutgers, no one really, expects anything out of them. Indiana, just sorry. Just nothing there for me at number 5. I think, looking at this and looking at how I want to go, of course, that leaves Penn State at, 4. Michigan State, really wish they were going to be better. Just don't think it's going to happen this time. Michigan's going to be at number 2 and Ohio State at number 1.
All right. Randy, go ahead and give us your East.
All right, my bottom feeders are kind of with Gary. I have Rutgers at 7, Maryland at 6, Indiana at 5. I think Penn State drops down a little bit. at number 4. No Connor Cook from Michigan State, so that's 3. But let's just get to the main 2. Ohio State and Michigan. Ohio State, I mean, it's been said a few times, they lose a lot of starters. They only have 3 returning starters on each side of the ball. But the recruiting is always great there, and you always think Urban Meyer can just piece everything together and make it work. And they get to host Michigan, but they have that amazingly great game in September at Oklahoma, which has been mentioned a few times. So stoked for that game. You look at Michigan, they have a ton of senior presence, but this is only Jim Harbaugh's second year. I think he's still kind of working his system in, getting the players that he wants into the system. So it's a little bit off and on for them. Their big thing is they only have 4 road games the whole year, but one is against Ohio State, and that defense is just ridiculous. So to me, I think Ohio State loses at Oklahoma, but runs the table, while Michigan runs the table up until that big Ohio State game, and I have to give it to the home team in Ohio State. So I think Ohio State wins this division and then goes on and beats Iowa in the conference title game. And yes, I do think they'll make the playoffs.
Hey, Gary, you think Ohio State beats Iowa too?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're going to see Ohio make the playoffs, like Randy said.
So you don't make the playoffs. All right. I mean, mine's not going to differ too much from you guys. I got Purdue at 7, Illinois at 6 in the West, Minnesota at 5, Northwestern at 4, Wisconsin I'm going to have them in 3rd. I think their schedule's a little bit too brutal that you expect them to win too many of those games. I'm going to have Nebraska just from the schedule's a little bit nicer to them, and I think they lost so many close games last year. I think they get the experience from that, and they win at least one more than Wisconsin. They'll get in 2nd this time. And Iowa, I think, at least by 1, if not 2, over the rest of the conference, wins this division, and they'll be representing the West. I've got Rutgers at 7, Maryland at 6, Indiana. I want to put them ahead of Penn State. I just can't do it right now. I think James Franklin's learning. I think Penn State's going to get better, but I'll have Penn State at 4, Michigan State at 3, and this is the hard one, but I think Ohio State, I'm going to look at it the same way as Randy. Ohio State has that really tough game against Oklahoma. I think they might lose that game, and then they'll end up beating Michigan at home, and that'll be the conference clincher. They beat Iowa, and I'm going to go with Brandon here. I think they're going to... I don't know. I'm trying to think of maybe some of the other teams that I have slotted. And I'll say they go ahead and make the playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they... If like Brandon said, they lose one of these games they don't need to, and they go down to 10-2 and don't win, that wouldn't shock me either. So, all right, we gave you our standings. We gave you who's going to win the conference, where they're going. Thank you to Brandon, and thank you to Rob Gritzer again for giving us these interviews and breaking down the conferences for us. As I said, if you didn't see that we have 2 shows, we also have an AAC show that we're about to do right now if you're listening live. If you're on download, it'll be right there for you, breaking down the whole American Athletic Conference. And then on the next Monday, the 18th, Tuesday, if you're on the download there, on the 19th, we'll be doing the ACC. And it looks like we're going to have Justin Gordon from Last Word on Sports helping us break it down along with Brandon. So, all right. Check out everything in the WTM Network. We just did the Wrestling to the Max podcast. We talked about that Raw, which was decent. It gave our Cruiserweight Classic predictions, and thanks to Chris Lemsky for helping out. Randy, I know you had a new backlog busting with some pretty big games that y'all talked about.
Yeah, we finished up that best of 2015. And now we go into getting ready for Zelda month. And I did the math on Zelda month, and I'm going to have no free time in August. So it was nice hanging out with you guys.
That's the wrong time that I'd have free time, Randy.
Yeah, no joke.
All right. Well, we will see you guys in a little bit or next week. Peace.